I want people to be more aware of their dog's state of mind. That's really what it comes down to. What is your dog going through mentally, and how are they showing it to you physically? Dog can't be super excited 24/7, and they can't be calm 24/7.
Do they pee on purpose?
So think about the amount of days that you've been home with him with things going fine. That becomes a pattern to the dog. And when that pattern breaks, how does it not affect the animal?
If every dog owner could make one simple change today to improve their dog's health span, what would that be?
To develop a routine that includes both mental and physical stimulation.
Do you think this is something people will understand, that they take supplements because they know that their own diet hasn't got everything it's needed in, that maybe their dogs also might need some sort of supplementation? So there we are. You know who we are. You know what you're listening to. And perhaps you've just come in. Perhaps you haven't listened to what was an incredible first season. How did you find your first season, your first time doing a podcast, Alicia, Shiro?
Honestly, amazing. I gotta say, at first I was a little nervous, couldn't find my rhythm. I think I was more focused on getting the questions answered that we wanted answered, as opposed to listening to the guest. And I've transitioned that to listening to the guests, forgetting about the questions, and kind of building on what they're already talking about and diving deeper into that. And I think once I kind of threw away the script and just freeballed it, I was more relaxed. And I think the guest was also a bit more relaxed, and there wasn't an agenda. Like, we weren't trying to hit certain things. We just kind of let them tell us their rich life ingredients.
Absolutely. And I think if the listener, you right now listening to this, let's break the fourth wall. If you go listen to episode 1 with Craig, and then you listen to episode 10, which I think is with Dr. Rachel Taylor, then you'll see that difference. I've seen that difference with you. That said, we're still hitting the 3 pillars.
Yes.
Health, wealth, and wisdom, the exact sort of ingredients to what makes a rich life. But I've definitely seen, watching you as your co-host, how you've gone from quite a strict, regimented, this is question 1, this is question 2, this is question 3, to this is question 1, and now I'm going to drill down on the answer. And that's something I've also found that, and this is probably not true, by the way, I think this is just something that I've found as an external looking in, but it seems you care more the further you go into the season. You are, you're less typing away on that little keyboard of yours. Please don't type on this particular episode or any episodes going forward. There's less of you looking.
Take notes.
You don't have to take notes. Just imagine we're having tea. We're having a brunch in New York somewhere where I'm Samantha and you're clearly Carrie, and we're just bringing people into our table and we're having a feck from the city. That is not against people who lisp, but that's just because I can't say the S word in case we get moved on our Apple iTunes. So I've definitely seen that. And I think what I've really enjoyed is I've never had a co-host for a podcast before. And it's been so much fun to sometimes allow myself to ask a question, get an answer, and then take a moment and not worry about getting the next question out, but knowing that you've got the next question. It's like a doubles pickleball game that we've got going now.
Totally. I love that. Yeah. And I would have never done it without a co-host such as yourself.
Oh, thank
Someone
you.
who has gone before me and paved the way.
Yes. So 10 years in the making for this overnight success. And before we talk about the success that has been season 1 of the podcast, I want to talk about the people that we've had on. And by the way, this is in no particular order. So if you find us suddenly going from episode 1 to episode 7, we're just talking about the guests we've had and what guests we've had. Where do you want to start?
Oh my goodness.
Craig. Let's start with Craig. I mentioned Craig. Craig was episode 1.
Actually, I think Lisa was episode 1,
Ooh,
but who's counting? I think Craig is a gem, right? And I met him at an event. He was doing a book signing and then on a speaking panel, and we were on the same panel. And that's how Craig and I met. And I'm telling you, I was just wowed by him. From going to Wall Street to creating this movement and community, he is a specific example of someone who's gone from zero to super successful. He had no
Okay, let me
social
stop
media
you. Let
following.
me stop you there. There is no, I'm from zero. Okay, there's no way that man is from zero. You can tell the difference from zero to hero. Let me tell you the difference. One, pockmarked skin. People who come from zero, like me, grew up with scurvy, eating penicillin off toast. That man's skin is porcelain. That man's hair is beautiful. He didn't, you can't polish that. He started a diamond and probably become more shiny with work. I'm not going to argue that. I think he is definitely that. But I want to see the hood. And I'm
Okay,
putting
let
inverted
me
commas.
clarify.
Yes,
Let me
thank
clarify.
you. Thank you.
Okay, zero meaning zero followers, like zero social media
Gotcha.
presence,
Gotcha.
and has now built this amazing community.
Mm.
And I think, and I've attended one of his events, and I have to say, the room, you could feel the energy in that room. And he and I became good friends. And I'm actually joining a program of his for the next 4 weeks. It
Oh,
meets
wow.
every Monday.
Excuse me.
Yeah, it really drills down to what's next and what's holding you back. How do you move the football forward?
Oh.
And I'm excited for that. And I think, one thing he said, even during our podcast, keep chasing the butterflies. I think it's important to ask yourself what gets you excited, because the day to day grind, we kind of just lose ourselves. And if you
Mm.
don't take that minute to really assess what does get you excited, and as you remember from all of our guests, everybody talked about play
Mm.
and how to keep that alive. And I think Craig shared a lot of ingredients during his episode, on how
I
to
would definitely
keep,
agree with that. I think
yeah,
you're 100% right. I think he provided a recipe that did exactly like you said. It included play. It included being authentic. It included self-awareness, right? Like even when I joked about his hair, and he's got glorious hair, and he's given himself such a strange haircut. I think on purpose, that you're not sort of blinded by his good looks and you can't pay attention to the incredible words coming out of his mouth.
I love
Um,
that a man could admit another man has good looks. I
hundred
love that
percent.
about you. It's
Thank you,
awesome.
thank you very much. 100%. Everyone deserves compliments. But I want to sort of move from we're talking about authenticity and self-awareness and how that's been such a strong ingredient in our show and season one, especially. Dr. Rachel Taylor, what was her
Oof.
one ingredient in that
Mind
particular
blowing.
thing? By the way,
Mind blowing, because
authenticity, self-awareness.
as you know, I'm fascinated by the brain.
I do.
And I remember one of the things she said, we were talking about detoxing the brain, which is what I'm going through right now. And she said cilantro is the
Oh,
best detox to get metals out of the brain. I'm going to go eat a bunch of guacamole with a ton of cilantro in it.
I love that. And for
Yeah,
those
she said a
people,
lot of great stuff.
she absolutely. Oh, so that was the
And look
first time my alarms
who it
ever gone off.
is. Look who
That
it
was
is. Not
that was a
me.
warning because we have we have another show coming straight after this. For those people who are not American, for the rest of us, coriander is the word that we use on the other side of
Yes.
the
For
pond for
cilantro,
cilantro.
yes.
That's right. Although I like cilantro. Dr. Rachel also said that you are the expert on you. And I thought that was really, really beautiful. What did Stacey Roy say on that same? Do you remember that?
Yeah, Stacy, I love. I mean, I love everybody, right? But
True.
Stacy is a trailblazer. One of the things, I think is a perfect example of someone who, didn't start out successful, right? She worked her way to that level doing various different things. She was a chef, she was a bartender, she had
Hmm.
these chef and bartending shows. And then she got on Lego Master. And she said she lost 3 times
Yeah.
before she won and took it all. Like every week she thought they were getting voted off the island. And it turns out that she won. And I think it's just such a unique Lego. I mean, it's such a
Mm.
unique, especially for a female.
Yeah.
To really dive into that world and take it to a whole new level. I just think everything she talked about building success, brick by brick.
Hmm.
Um, and I think one of the things she focused on, and I don't want to
By the
misquote
way,
it,
if
it
you're listening,
was,
that is the New York anthem playing in the background.
oh
Uh,
goodness,
Is that a
I
police car or a
know.
fire ambulance? What is that?
To me, that was a police car.
A police car. Okay, so listeners, every time you hear that, remember that Alicia owes us $1 just going forward. Um,
I
she
think one of
also,
the things she said was to anchor your identity not in what you
yes,
do, but why. The
yes,
why are you doing it?
and
Yes,
I
and I
love
think
that.
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, she talks about the nerdy bartender, and if she had stuck to that, she would have never got to where she did. But she identified and anchored her identity to exactly what you said. What no, what you do, but why you do it. Very much similar to the Simon Sinek's starting with why. A second, a second and third, huge recipe for a
Jason is
rich life
freezing.
was meaning. Was oh
I think
oh
it's your
god.
Wi-Fi, Jay.
My
Yeah.
wife was only perfect. I did, yeah, it cut me out.
Yeah.
Picture in picture mode closed. Okay, so do you want to go back in?
We're still here. I think we're
Oh, we're
good.
still here. Okay, great. Yeah, it just said
Yep.
my picture in picture collapsed. I have no idea why. Um, so going back, the next rich life recipe that we found was meaningful connections and community, and we had the adorable, the cute, the young, the amazing John Stessel, who said, "Rising tides lift all boats." It's actually rising tides lift all ships, but I like that he said boats because he's an American.
On today's episode of the Rich Life Recipe, we are honored to have Ian Grant, who is a professional dog trainer with over 18 years of experience, specializing in instinct based training.
Hmm.
He helps dog owners understand their dog's natural behavior to create better relationships and lasting results. We are super excited to have Ian on today. And welcome, Ian Grant.
So we're going to get straight into it. Alicia's been kind enough to give us that fantastic intro of who our guest is. So, Ian, after working with dogs for over 17 years, what's the one thing dog owners think they're doing right, but is actually potentially harming their dog's health or behavior?
I think getting them overexcited constantly is a big issue. I mean, the majority of the time when I walk into a home or, I check the notes before I see a client, it's usually revolving around overexcitement. And the big issue is that when we have a dog, everybody will say, my dog is great 95% of the time. It's that other 5% that it's like the Jekyll and Hyde kind of thing. What they don't understand is that 5% of the time, or sometimes even more, when the dog's super excited, they've never learned how to communicate with their dog when they're super excited. They only know how to communicate with their dog when there's love, affection, snuggling, feeding time, like all those more intimate times. There's never that communication that's open when they're super excited. And so dogs can't be, it's not sustainable. A dog can't be super excited 24/7, and they can't be calm 24/7. So depending on the dog and the owner's lifestyle and activity level, there has to be a balance between both. But otherwise, if there isn't, I think that's where a lot of people get themselves into trouble.
And how can that be harmful, if you don't mind my asking?
Well, I look at it from like when I walk into a home and a dog is just going like 100 miles an hour, they start to live in that state of mind. They start to get nurtured while they're in that state of mind. So, if you show affection to your dog that's constantly excited, you're telling your dog, I want more of this. And so what happens with a dog that's overexcited and is getting nurtured for it? Well, as we all know, the more we exercise, the more we build up our stamina. And so these dogs that are constantly overexcited, constantly prancing everywhere, running everywhere, panting heavily, quickly, it's building stamina. So what you're dealing with today is going to be a lot harder to deal with a month from now, a year from now. And so it becomes this, awful cycle of, and on top of it too, it becomes the cycle of just this constant activity, but it's really hard on a dog's nervous system and them physically. If you think about us, we can't sustain, just unless you're Forrest Gump, you can't sustain running on end over and over and over for days and days and days. Your body needs a rest or something's going to give. And so I think we have to keep that in mind too when it comes to our dog, their physical well-being as well as mental too.
Gotcha. Note number one. I'll put that into the record.
Right? And what would you say? So, speaking on that, like high elevated behavior, right? My mom, the dog passed away, which was very sad because she
Mm,
loved the dog, but it was a Pomeranian, very high energy and just incessant barking when
mm.
someone would come in the house. It didn't
Your
matter
mom or
who
the
it was,
dog?
both. So, and that's why I'm saying, I think, and my mom has that like underlying nervous energy. Like she's always doing something. And I
Mm,
feel like the dog's energy was always like, who's here? Who's here? Like, and that's kind of
yeah,
like how she is. What can I get for you? What can I do? Can I make you something? Can I do something? But the dog
yeah.
would be like "Bark, bark, 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 bark," the whole time. Um, and she used to have this little device, like you click the device and it's like a noise only a dog could
Mm,
hear. And
Sure.
you know the dog would hear it because he would stop the
Hmm.
barking. But it wouldn't last. And I was like, "Are you torturing him? I don't think you should use that."
mm.
Um,
Yeah.
so what do you say to people who kind of like I know a lot of people who have those devices or like the dog is incessant barking every time, even if it's someone they know that's coming in the house.
Can we break that up into two questions? Sorry to jump in
Yeah,
your
because we
question,
need
Alicia.
to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I think that's such an important point that you've brought up, and
Yeah.
it's one of my questions as well. So I'm
Yeah.
so thankful that you brought that up. Yeah, so let's answer the question number one, which is: are those instruments of torture, or are they great training devices?
Number one, I think the dog needs to be taught what it means. A lot of times when we bring in a tool, it doesn't matter if it's a leash, a harness, a collar, or a device
Like
of
a
any sort. The dog needs to be taught what it means. Oftentimes, I see people grab a hold of that thing like they're Clint Eastwood holding a 357. They become very powerful. Their chest comes out, their shoulders go back, and now they're super confident. And then they hit the button or whatever. And it's interesting what you said, Alicia, too, because as a dog trainer, my brain, like, I go, hold on. When we say the behavior stops, that's one thing.
Right.
But what we're not recognizing is what body language and what state of mind does the dog go into now? That's the
Mm.
second part of the question, Jason, that I was kind of like, whoa, we have to address that part of it. Because oftentimes when we talk about tools to our friends, dog owner friends, we say this tool just stopped all the behavior. If you're frustrated with the behavior and you hear those words, you go, "Oh my gosh, that is exactly what I need." But we're disregarding the dog's emotional state of mind during that whole process. So yeah, you could hit the button even if it's a noise and that they can hear. You can hit the button and the head sinks, the ears go back and the dog kind of
Hmm.
slinks around. You're like, "Whoa, I don't want to create that relationship with my dog." But most of
Exactly.
the time, the Joneses next door here that stop the behavior, and then it can run rampant. Like this is the best tool possible. So I think we always have to consider their body language, their state of mind, everything when we do a training of any sort. To go back to the first question, I look at why does a dog need or have the need or desire to bark that much? There could be a couple of reasons from lack of stimulation, meaning that the only stimulation is the one person that comes over like once a week, and the dog just lets out all this energy and frustration at this person. That can manifest through excitement as well as nervousness or anxiety or such. But then I look at it and go, okay, like you said, if your mother is kind of on the nervous, anxious side, and if that dog's living with that state of mind, that dog kind of becomes that. Or they look at it and go, well, you're not really confident enough to take care of this situation, so I guess I have to.
Mm.
And if the dog doesn't have the qualifications to take care of things, meaning they can be confident about it, they can, sniff out the situation, literally investigate the person, understand things are okay and there's no threat, then the dog can move along. But you get other ones that are just like ruff, 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 ruff. You just
Mm.
constant. That to me is almost like a scream for help of like, help me through what is going on because I don't like being in this state of mind.
So interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of layers to it.
I
Yeah.
it's I mean it's such a weird thing to think about, but I was thinking about my last wife and how like this
Oh
is
boy, that's
terrible.
another episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like we would get into these altercations where worked too much. I wasn't paying enough attention and completely on me. And she would go dead quiet. And I'd think, well, I've won that argument because she's dead quiet. I get to move on. But her body language would change, and she was very tall, and I could pick up that her posture was different. And she had a particular thing she would do, which is she would be dead quiet until the next morning. I'd wake up, and then she'd be ready to tell me all the things she'd held back from the night before.
Yeah.
And I was telling a friend of mine, like, how I'm 6 years since my divorce. I've learned so much about myself, and I've gone to therapy, and I've got a neuroscientist who was on the show season 1, Dr. Rachel. And I said, it's funny. Sometimes we just take that immediate reaction as the result, right? So, and my friend has a beautiful dog, and he was like, yeah, when I say stop and the dog stops, I feel great. But then I look at the dog, and like you said, the head's down, the ears down, the tail's between the legs. And you realize you're doing a lot more than just stopping the dog in mid-flow. You're affecting their entire behavior. Yes. I was wondering, so I suppose to lead this into a question, my question would be, as someone that trains dogs, do you see a lot of replication in, like, hold on a second, this is also a lot how you treat a human. If you reward them for certain behavior, they'll keep doing it. If you allow them to react from your own body language, they're going to do something. If you're violent, they're violent. If you're calm, they're calm. If, like the mother who's always trying to help, the dog's always trying to be a part of something. Do you see a lot of that kind of mirroring between a dog and a dog owner?
Yeah, for sure. There's a lot of times where I've even walked into homes and I kind of feel the vibe, and the dog's a little quiet and the owners are quiet. And I was like, what's going on in here? And they're like, oh, we just had a little discussion. It was a little heated about, the dog training. And I was like, oh, I can feel it as soon as I walk in. And if I'm feeling it, for sure an animal is feeling it, right. So it doesn't matter if those emotions go super high, excited, happy, good time in the house, or if somebody's walking around very insecure. I mean, you can come up with all sorts of different terms for somebody's mental health not being where it needs to be, or just anxious, whatever. But when our dogs live in that situation every day, if they don't get fulfilled and they're just soaking that in every day, I think they become it. Because what other choice are they shown, trained, treated, But then on top of it, we either tend to come in too hot, meaning like the dog that's barking, we just use the device and it makes the dog go, oh no, head low, tail between the legs. So we either come in too hot, which I say is basically too much punishment for the crime, right? Or we don't come in enough, where we go, oh, hey, stop. And the dog's rough. And we go, oh, but hey, can you be a little quiet for me? So there's this, like, I don't want to say a scale, but there's a sensitivity where I think that a lot of dog owners don't understand where their dog is mentally. Traditional dog training says, hold a treat, tell your dog to sit, they sit, you give food, right? It's very 100% traditional. But what we are actually rewarding is what they're doing mentally and physically. But the obedient part of it is that we're focused strictly on what they're doing physically. So if we constantly focus on just what they're doing physically and we disregard what they're doing mentally, well, that can get us into a whole heap of trouble. Because I tell my clients all the time, give me a dog that's standing on all fours and that can be calm in most situations, if not all. Give me that over a dog that I can put into a sit but is vibrating because their brain is going 100 miles an hour and they don't know how to handle the situation.
Right.
You see, so we focus so much on what they're doing physically that we have no idea what they're doing mentally. But you can't reward one without the other. I can't reward the sit and go, well, I'm not rewarding the vibrating that they're doing right now. Like we can't do it individually.
The mental aspect of it. Yeah.
Yes.
That's, I don't think you don't hear too much about that, which is great that you do focus on that in your training. Because I haven't heard a lot about it's always, the focus is always on the behavior, not the result of the how it's affecting the animal mentally, which brings me to my other biggest question. Do animals, let's say, they want to mark their territory or they're mad at you because you left them for 3 days. Do they pee on purpose? Like on spite? People will be like, so I have a cat, not a dog. And if I travel and come back, when I get back, I could tell he's not the same. He doesn't like it. He's like, why'd you leave me for 5 days? And he'll like bite and he'll pee on the floor.
Yeah.
but normally he doesn't do that. So I'm
Yeah.
like, is it a spite thing? Like what's going on in their brain, you know? Because
Yeah.
it is emotional and mental as well
Mm-hmm.
as the behavior. But
Yeah.
you know, you always hear people say, "Oh, you know, he peed on the floor on purpose."
Yeah.
Like, did
Yeah.
he?
Or they get into the garbage on purpose, or they chew your slipper on purpose.
Right.
Right. Yeah. So how old is your cat? How long have you had your cat, Alicia?
He's going to be 10 this year.
Okay. So think about the amount of days that you've been home with him with things
Hmm.
going fine. That becomes a pattern to the dog. And when that pattern breaks, how does it not affect the animal?
Right.
So if you think about it, we're leaving it up to the animal to create a new pattern on their own, where for, let's say, 10 years, your cat is dependent on you to create that pattern. So cold turkey, the cat goes, or dog, doesn't matter, goes, okay, I have no idea what's going on right now. I just have to do what I think is right. And I think a lot of times in that confusion and that unsureness, that you get those types of behaviors that will pop up where they're just out of the norm. But obviously you came back to your cat, right?
Right.
And then does the cat continue to do that? To pee everywhere or back in the litter box? That all depends on their sensitivity of how quickly they can snap back into a routine and get used to it. Because day one of you being back doesn't mean everything's rainbows and butterflies again.
And you're right, because he doesn't. It takes a few days for him to
Yeah.
get to feel comfortable, get back into his routine. I've actually trained him to use a pee pad
Yep.
because he travels with me. But if
Yeah.
I go international, I don't bring him because it's just too complicated and
Yeah.
it's impossible. So
Yeah.
I'll leave him. I'll have someone come to my place and stay with him. But yeah, you're
Yeah.
so right. It takes a few days for him to,
Yeah. So if it
yeah,
takes him a few days to get used to you being back, why wouldn't it take a few days for him to get used to being alone?
yeah,
You
that
know.
makes
So
sense.
in the dog world, if we went out and adopted a dog today and today's day one, depending on the level of sensitivity of the dog, it can take them up to 90 days to feel comfortable in your
Wow.
home. So they get established to you as a relationship, the environment, the routine, all of it, all of it. So some dogs can just walk in and be like, yeah, this is cool. I love being here. This is awesome. And it might be 3 days and your honeymoon's over and the dog fits like a glove. There's other situations. It can be 3 or 4 months and people are still they're trying to navigate things with their dog. So again, state of mind
So
stuff to be
interesting.
aware of.
Yeah, that's amazing. Jason, we can't hear you. I think you're muted.
I am indeed muted. Before I ask you my next important
Rosie.
Before I ask you my next important question, thank you, Peanut Gallery, for all those comments. I have to ask, how did you get into this? Because although we've given you a great intro, we haven't really talked about how did you find your way into this particular rich life?
Yeah, I was at one point, I was working in a hotel as a bellman. I've worked in a number of hotels. I was not thoroughly happy. And at that time, I was playing golf on the side. And I remember walking outside, my mom going, hey, what is it that you really love doing? I said, I love playing golf. I wasn't great at it. I was like a 5 handicap. Okay. And she goes, well, take your shot at that. And so I did. I Powerful words from your mother, at when you're in your early 20s, right? Somebody just saying, "Hey, just go for it," right? You don't want to hear anything else but that. And
Mm.
so, fast forward 8 years, I played professionally, not like PGA Tour or anything like that, but I could kind of sense it was winding down towards the end, and I was home for the holidays, and I saw an episode. My father was flipping through the channels, and I saw an episode of The Dog Whisperer with Caesar Milan. And I always really enjoyed psychology in school. We actually had a social psychology class when I was maybe like a sophomore or something. I loved it, like learning about how the brain works and why people behave the way they do. It fascinated me. And so at that point, when I saw the episode of the Dog Whisperer, he talked about a dog psychology, and I was like, whoa, because we grew up with dogs. We never owned a leash, never owned a crate. We let our dogs out at night for the night. Everything opposite of what you would do now. And it kind of came down to that of like, I just need to try it. I need to go for this and see, what happens, because I was like enthralled with it. And about a month after the holidays, I met a girl, my now wife, who had a dog, and her dog ripped apart pillows and jeans and blankets, carpet. Like, you reach down to pet her, she'd pee everywhere. She was a mess. But I brought in some knowledge from watching the dog whisperer, and pretty wet behind the ears at that point, but starting to get an understanding of it, and still working at another job at a hotel at that time. But I was doing the dog thing on the side, walking her every day, taking in all these episodes as much as I could, because there wasn't like the Netflix, right? You can't just stream a series, because this was
Right.
2005-ish, somewhere in there. So you can't just I just bought the DVDs, right? Because that's the only thing we could do at that time, and just watch the episodes over and over again. And we were living in Florida in the time, so we moved here to Vermont, which is where I'm from originally. And I just put up a fence in our backyard, and I started taking dogs in for daycare and boarding, and that became my classroom. Literally every day, anywhere from 5 to 15 to 20 dogs a day, walking them. And that was literally my classroom for 6 years by myself. No other trainers help, just the episodes of Dog Whisper, and just trying to mimic everything that I saw. So, and then it blew up to what it is today. I'm 18 years into it, and love working with people and love working with dogs.
Wow. And you eventually had the opportunity to work with Caesar Milan, right? Tell us a little bit about that. I'm sure that was like meeting your hero, right?
Yeah. So I did it for 6 years out of my house, and I remember one day, and this was all by myself. So the dogs would spend the night in my basement. We're raising our daughter at the time, and then we were pregnant with my son. So it's 2013. I had 22 dogs to myself in my backyard. And I was like, it might be time to think about growing this a little bit, because word was getting around, and people were traveling half hour, 45 minutes just to bring their dogs to me for a day of daycare. So it was beyond our county, and our county only has 25,000 people in it. So it's pretty small. And so I opened up the facility, and then it was less than a year later, I attended one of his workshops in Florida, 4-day workshop. And it was like, yeah, there's no editing on TV going on right now, because this is in front of your eyes. This is all real, legit stuff. And so, I thoroughly enjoyed it, learned a lot. You meet other trainers, you build your network, which I had never had before. So that was like, there's more of me, it was kind of that feeling of like, okay, I've met people that are in my tribe, so to speak. And so I've always kept track. I've always done, my own version of dog psychology, if you will. And then 2022, I was invited to be a part of the staff to work at his workshops. A trainer friend of mine had invited me out there. So my job at that time was just to kind of help supply support to his team of trainers and himself, move dogs in and around, set up staging, that kind of thing. And then last year I was promoted to being the supervisor for that staff of 10 people or so. So I look at the trajectory of it, of like 2004, the holidays, of seeing him on TV, and now I'm working for him. I've interviewed him on my podcast, and it's just pretty cool the way the trajectory has gone. I'm very grateful for it.
That's a real full circle. Sorry, Alicia.
Yeah.
We're in the same page, Jay. Full circle.
Two things came to mind there. The first was Gareth Evans. And Gareth Evans said, one of my favorite quotes, he said, all we need to do is do the thing. I always say, all we need to do is do the damn thing, but same thing.
Yeah.
The second, which came to mind when you were talking, is start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. You had a backyard, you had a dog that was a problem, and you did what you can to solve that one dog's problem. And then you realized you could solve other dogs' problems, and you sort of took it from there. And I think that's incredibly powerful. I think it's a real recipe, again, that we've seen again and again, whether it's building a house in the backyard, whether it's being a nerdy bartender, whether it's following your curiosity around psychology with dogs or psychology with our neuroscientist. I think for the listeners, that's a real moment to take in. If you take nothing else in, and I'm sure there's plenty more to take in, that is something to really pay attention to. Brings me to my second question. If every dog owner could make one simple change today to improve their dog's lifespan and health span, what would that be? Would it be
I think,
nutrition, supplements, change in routine?
yeah, I mean, nutrition has been its own monster, if you will, in the last 10 years. Nutrition for dogs has come a long ways, and it's headed in the right direction. And I shudder to think what we used to feed our dogs 30 years
Mm.
ago compared to today. Much like us, it's definitely
Mm-hmm.
better. I would say the one thing to me would be to develop a routine that includes both mental and physical stimulation, because I think I often tell people I've walked into homes where people haven't walked their dog in a year and a half.
What?
Yeah, the dog's got to have cabin fever. They're dealing with so many behaviors. The nails are so long that they're curling underneath.
Oh
Like
man.
it's and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, there's so much
At
to
what
unravel right
point,
here."
yeah, at what point is that neglect more than we
It
just don't walk the dog?
I will say this, Alicia, back in the day when I first saw somebody walking a dog on the street and the dog would be pulling him everywhere, I'd be like, "That's not the right way. You're not doing it." I've learned and matured and I go, "At least the dog's out, right?
Mm,
Like it could be worse."
yeah.
And so I look at that and I go, "Yeah, the dog hasn't been out for a year and a half, but I'm here.
Yeah,
They've
it's a
made the
good sign.
call, right? They've made the call. The momentum is going." And so I look at like the physical and mental stimulation, and I think too often people look at that and go, "Oh my gosh, I don't have 2 hours a day to provide that for my dog." And I never want to tell anybody they have to spend 2 hours a day with their dog. I think when you adopt a dog, you need to dedicate some time on a regular basis. It's all there is to it. But I want people to look at things in a 7-day block, if you will. So maybe Sunday you took it for a walk. Monday you did some scent games inside the house or something. You do something different every day, or something a few times a week, so that when Saturday night comes along, you can look at it and go, "Wow, I've given my dog some different things to do." We just didn't do the mile walk at the end of the road and back, and that's it. Dog's inside of the house for the next 23 hours. I think that variety helps our dog. I think it helps their mental health as well as the physical part of them just getting outside, walking, playing, fetch, tug, whatever. I think that mental and physical stimulation can go such a long ways to unwanted behaviors, and takes a lot of stress away from the owner too, if they're able to commit to something like that.
And you think stress is something that could shorten sort of health span and lifespan?
I will tell you this: there's I don't have like the actual link or like study kind of thing, but there is a source that is saying that dogs that are anxious, that exhibit anxiety, their temperature runs high.
Wow.
So if their temperature
Mm,
runs high, what is it doing to them physically?
Mm.
And if
yeah.
we're now, to bring this full circle back, if we're petting the dog that's anxious and their temperature is hot, we're telling the dog we want more of this. So what is
Mm,
this doing for the dog's mental health and also their physical well-being? There's a reason why there's anti-anxiety meds for dogs that's very cheap, and it's running rampant through our world, because we'd rather just deal with the symptom than deal with the actual issue at hand.
Mm.
Like the Prozac for dogs might be 70 or $80 a month. I can't compete with that as far as a dog trainer trying to make a living, with what I have to charge for lessons. So from a dog owner's point of view, what's cheaper? Well, let's just give the dog medication. So
Mm.
it can be difficult, but now you can see where the health and well-being of the dog, the mental health, it can certainly affect them physically too.
I mean, it's just like people. They're not getting to the root of the issue. Like, it's just like anything. If you have something physically wrong with you, you take a drug, and that drug inevitably has side effects that are probably worse than what you are originally dealing with.
Yeah.
And everybody wants the fast solution, whether it's a person or an animal, and that's just not sustainable. You're not ever going to solve the real issue and the mental effect it's having both on a human and as well as an animal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and getting into like animal advocacy is like a huge thing for me. Animal abuse just makes me crazy. And
Yeah.
I'm happy to see the laws are becoming stricter, because my personal opinion, if you can hurt an animal who literally has done nothing, like what they have no, they don't hate anyone. They have
I'm
no
going to
way to
stop you for
hate.
one split second,
Yep.
just to follow the rules of Apple and Spotify. The
Yeah.
following is a trigger warning. If listening to any conversation around herding dogs or dogs being at unease or dogs being damaged is something that might upset you or upset someone in your family, please do not listen to the next 2 minutes of Alicia just explaining what hurts her personally. We all understand that this is a very sensitive issue, but it is important for us that we take care of our listeners, which includes you. So if this is something that might bother you, please skip the next 2 minutes and Alicia
Fast
will
forward.
forth forward to the next scene. Please continue.
Yeah, I mean, I just, I can't comprehend it because they're
Yep.
defenseless. And I just, I could never understand that. So I am happy to see that the laws are becoming stricter in that arena to prevent that from happening. And hopefully people, will take the time to realize, let's get to the root of the issue because the long term will be more beneficial than just trying to do a quick fix up front.
Yeah.
So that brings me to my question for you.
So let
Could
me. I
you?
want.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want
yeah.
to
Go
address
ahead.
that real quick for you too, because I look at that and I go, okay, one of two things: either the dog owner doesn't fully understand the dog, so they get angry and frustrated, and then they take it out on the dog. I look at that as number one, or number two, the human is not in the place mentally where they should be. So we always deal with like symptoms and roots, so to speak. Like so if the root is not understanding your dog, somebody like me, I can totally help you out, help you understand that kind of thing. If the symptom is more personal, I'm obviously not the guy and not qualified to help you through that, but there are people out there to help. So I just want to, like, I still look at it as like a symptom and root kind of issue, depending, no matter the severity of it.
Totally. Which brings me to my question. Can you share like a particularly challenging case that you encountered and that overcame it? Like there was a solution and you were able to figure it out, but it was particularly challenging in the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's funny. As soon as you said that, it was 5 or 6 dogs just flash in my head of like, which one could I pull out here? Because it's, I'll tell you one, and it may not end the way you think that it's going to. So I remember we would offer a board and train service, so where somebody would drop their dog off to us for a certain amount of time. We'd train it within the facility around other dogs, and sometimes it could be something simple like leash handling and those kind of skills, or it could be aggression. And so we took this dog in. I remember his name was Norman, right? I always that kind of name, right? And that dog. And we had some of our kennels for our training dogs upstairs in our facility. We took the dog in, and I remember I went up that afternoon to get him. I walk around the corner, and he just looked at me with a set of eyes where I was like, "Oh, this is a little different. This is not what I'm used to seeing." Not that he wasn't comfortable, but he wasn't uncomfortable with humans. But it was just kind of like, he's like, "We'll do it. That's fine, but I'm not thrilled with it." Around other dogs, he was not having it. And he was a big, like, American bulldog. He, the better part of 90 pounds. It's a lot of dog. This was probably about year 7 or so into my career. So I've got some knowledge here, but I would never consider myself an expert. And so we go through the 3 weeks, have some good days, have some bad days. It was just like a replay hit in my head. Day 21, the morning that he's going home, I walk upstairs. And he's looking at me with those same set of eyes that he did on day 1. And it hit me at that point that I didn't really get him anywhere. And as I look at it, I mean, I understood this a couple of years after that. I mean, today I understand it way more. I think in the beginning part of a dog trainer's career, when we learn things, we feel like we can take on anything and everything. And that dog at that time was above my skill set. And I don't know. It's like I couldn't realize it at that time. And I mean, I can see his eyes clear as day. But I think knowing, no matter what job you're in, I think knowing what your skill set and what you're capable of doing is so important, because those people invested their money in me. That's kind of really
Did Ian freeze?
There haven't been many times where I felt bad taking somebody's money just because of what I wasn't able to do with their dog. Like I feel like I've always been able to make progress with people's dogs, and if I can't, I will tell them, I am not your guy. I know another trainer that is. This person's above my skill set that will fit you better than I can at the time. And so I that's what it came down to for me, was skill set of knowing that dog was too much for me. And I can easily see it now when somebody sends me an email and says, "Hey, this is the dog we have." I go, "Great, not for me. I'm not your guy." And I'm very comfortable saying that too, and admitting it, and letting them move on to bigger and brighter things down the road.
I'm gonna fucking kill someone.
Yeah, that's a heck of a story, and it makes complete sense. I think it was Warren Buffett or something that was like, find what you're great at and just get better at that. Don't
Yeah.
try and be master of everything. If it's not
Yep.
for you, you're doing a better service saying you're someone else you should speak to. Then it's me or nothing. Your dog
Yep.
absolutely buggered unless I can sort this out.
Yep.
I'm going to ask a personal question because Alicia's not here to shut me down and say you can't ask that question.
It's the boys' locker room for a second.
Exactly. And ask whatever I want. You've spent 17 years, right? 17 years helping people understand their dogs better. Proper training. For everything I've read, and please, if I say anything that you think is absolutely crazy, correct me. But from what I've read, and I've been doing a lot of reading in the last 4 months, proper training, can extend a dog's lifespan by reducing stress, by getting it out there, getting it moving, all the things around calcium and joints and eyesight. But I'm wondering about nutrition, because like you said, we've come a far way from just 10 years ago. Do you think nutrition and supplementation are important when it comes to keeping dogs healthier, living longer, waggier tails for many more years?
100%. I the way that I look at that, Jason, is this: if I sat down and I had a Big Mac 3 meals a day for weeks, let alone months, you're just gonna feel like crap. You're not providing your body with much nutrition at all. The flip side of this too is I don't think people understand how important variety is in our dog's diet. Again, when I think back of like what we were feeding 30 years ago, it was the same can of food over and over for years. And you think about what that can do to the insides of a dog's body, let alone to ours. And so I'm a big proponent of giving our dogs variety. Whether you cut up some carrots, whether you cut up some strawberries, blueberries are considered a superfood for our dogs. Sprinkling those in, pumpkin's really good. You can literally go down the scroll hole, as they call it, as far as like learning what dogs can eat and what they can't. Always start in moderation, and please, I'm not a vet, so I'm not like telling people to go out and just serve your dog carrots every day, all day. But I think that variety helps their system. And I think it was about literally when I first started into the dog training world, I remember there was like a massive recall. It might have been like mid 2000s or something, 2006. All sorts of foods were getting recalled. And I think that really stemmed what we're seeing today. You're looking at 20 years later. And we're seeing the quality of foods. You can go into a feed store where you may get stuff for your livestock, and there's coolers in there now full of raw dog food, that's frozen that you can take home. There's shelves that are full of high quality kibble and that kind of thing. And so I think we're heading in the right direction. But when we learn what to feed our dogs, as far as, because there's a lot of people that are making their own foods at home for their dogs, right? Because that information is out there. Yeah. I think the only key thing that we're missing is the balance of everything, because we just can't look at it and go, well, our dogs are carnivores, let's just feed it chicken
Raw
and beef.
food.
Yeah, and just leave it at that, just a hunk of chicken and that's it, because they need other things. So although we're heading in the right direction, we just can't forget that there has to be a balance there, for the dog and for the variety and for their betterment of their health too. But yeah, I think dogs, we're going to see the benefit of this probably in another easily 5 to 10 years, that dogs are going to be living longer with us, which is we all want that, right? We all want
Absolutely.
them to be with us longer.
And it's exactly that, right? Like, so, and this is why I said it's selfish. I'm launching a thing called Paw Print Lab, which is the AG1 for dogs. You look like a health guy. You're fit. I've seen your TikTok. I've seen your Instagram, right? And I'm sure you're doing the same thing. You've probably got a scoop of something green. just to make sure you've hit all your pieces. But I'm like,
Sure.
we know what works on dogs. We've got the dog aging project. We've got so much literature around the supplements that work, but no one's giving it to them in something simple, simple supplement they can take every single day. They can drop it directly in their mouth or into their water, that has a proactive approach to pets' well-being, especially when things like NAD and NMD and CQ010 are all already being tested on dogs for the last 10 years to see if they're safe for humans, but then we don't give it back to the dogs. And I was like, okay, there must be something around this. So I spent the last 5 months just doing research into the world's first dog supplementation. Do you think this is something people will understand, that they take supplements because they know that their own diet hasn't got everything it's needed in, that maybe their dogs also might need some sort of supplementation?
I think the first thing I thought of when you say that too is that we're in such an age that's full of information that I think sometimes it's hard to understand what to follow and what to do. I've worked out off and on. I mean, COVID, we all hit it hard during COVID, right? Like worked out a lot. And I've done a number of programs since then, off and on. You have your off time, on time. But for me, like looking that up and scrolling of like what's going to be best, and that, and people are saying you got to keep track of all your macros, and other people, you got to keep track of how you feel, and you got to keep track of how you look. Get on the scale. Don't get on the scale. All this stuff. And it's just like, it's paralysis through analysis, because you're just looking at so much of it. And I think that's happening in the dog training world too, right? Like somebody like yourself can jump on Instagram and be like dog training, and you're going to get inundated for months on that kind of thing. And so I think it's finding what works for the type of person. I think it's finding out what works for the dog too. This is where, people know their dogs better than I do when I walk in, right? They know all the little idiosyncrasies and all that kind of stuff. And so I think it's important when somebody looks at their dog and determines their health and then goes, okay, what is it that my dog needs, or what do they lack? And then I think going from there and understanding that we have to educate ourselves. That's the hard thing too, because just like, in that situation with what you're talking about with supplements, there's who knows how many supplements out there for dogs, and everybody's at their different level of knowledge with it. And so I think the education should come with the product, so to speak. I think that you can only fit so much on a label, right? Like,
absolutely.
Just like a dog training tool, you can only fit so much on the back of that package on how to use it, but nothing ever talks about the mental state of mind that the dog's in, And so I think, to me, of like, the education is where, that's the beautiful part of our world right now, is there's so much education, but I think we have to condense it for people, for them to understand this can benefit your dog this way and how, and we can keep track of it, or whatever the case may be. But I think there's a lot of potential there, but I think we have to narrow things down for people and not take it super deep, and just help them understand it on a different level.
100% agree. In fact, we were talking about exactly this, and I was saying I want to do like a little QR code where they can click it and it can be like, okay, there's only 4 ingredients, and here's each one, and here's why, and here's all this research that you can go look up yourself. Again, like I was saying, the Dog Aging Project is absolutely amazing because they've got decades of research of all these different things and what they've done and how it's been proven. And they're doing one right now on resveratrol. I always get this word wrong. Do you know what I mean?
It's in wine, right? Too.
Yes.
Yeah. I read the book with David Sinclair about aging. I think he talked about it in his book.
Exactly.
And there's a lot of studies done with dogs and their aging, and yeah. I know what you're talking
about.
They're
doing a big one right now. They're trying to get dogs of all sizes to enter. So if you are listening to this and you are based in America, do go to the Dog Aging Project, see if there's one nearby you in which you can have your dog tested for free, and they'll put it through the process. It is a double-blind study. For those that don't know what that means, it means that there is a chance that your dog is not getting this drug. They'll just get a placebo and they'll test against that. But that actually makes it more ethical, more transparent, which is why I think I'm such a big component to it. You're based out in Canada, right?
Vermont.
There we go.
Yes.
What's that like? I mean, is it completely different? Because like you grew up kind of watching American TV and about how American dogs, is there are dogs just dogs? Or is there very much like, this is a Canadian dog, this is a Siberian dog, this is a Chihuahua from France. This is my friend has a Cypriot dog, and it
Yeah,
definitely is Cypriot. It's a little Chihuahua that just likes to sleep all day long, and is very not
sure.
Mexican.
Yeah. I think I always go into it looking at energy first.
Oh,
What is the dog about before? Now, if you think about this too, Jason, if we as humans did that,
mm,
where we walk into a situation and we go, oh, this is a group of people that are very happy. This is a group of people that's kind of reserved. There's a group of people that seem very confident, right? We
mm,
if we looked at it from that perspective rather than, oh, that person's black, that person's Asian, that person's Native
mm.
American, right? Or that person has a black jacket on, that person has a yellow jacket. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I don't walk into a home and go, all right, well, I know, I'm walking into a Chihuahua's house. I'm going, what kind of state of mind and energy does this dog have when I arrive? What am I dealing
Mm,
with? I think that allows me and us as trainers that practice this kind of way, it allows us to be more open to what's
mm,
going on. And we don't walk in with preconceived ideas or notions. Now, that being said, if I walk into a home that, I know is going to be a husky, I know that husky has DNA and instincts that says that dog wants to run, right?
mhm.
They just want to go, whether it's pulling or just running across the countryside. So we can't disregard what their DNA and what their genetics say. But to me, knowing, okay, this is who I'm dealing. This is an anxious husky. This is a husky that's unsure of me. That's what I'm dealing with first.
Mm,
I may use some of its genetics to help me, meaning this dog needs to get out. So I may, hook a leash to me, jump on my bike, and I'm going to take this dog for a run to help it make it feel a little bit better. So we can tap into those genetics to help with that energy of the dog. And of course, my conversations with the owners and such. So I don't necessarily walk in and go, okay, here's a pit bull. There's 10 in the news in the last 6 months and this dog's going to eat me. If I walk in super nervous and that dog wants to lick my face off, well, I just wasted a lot of energy and my anxiety on what's just going to happen. So I feel like going into things more open, I think in that situation, when you're more open to take in information too,
mm.
rather than just put on these blinders and go, I know this is a situation. This is what I'm going to have to do. I think it just comes off too abrupt with the dog and with the owner. So I think that allows me to work with the owner, work with the dog, and kind of, be sensitive to the whole situation.
I guess I want to wrap this up because I don't want to take up any more of your valuable time. I'd love to know for you, what is the perfect client for you? Who, if someone's
Mm,
listening to this right now and they're like, I want to work with you, right? This is
yeah,
exactly what I'm trying to find out about. I care about my dog's energy. I care about my dog's mental state. Then I care about my dog's nutrition. I care about my dog's physicality. And most people that I'm talking to, and I've seen this again as the last couple of months, this is all I've done is talk to people and dogs. They don't mention energy, which is really interesting. They don't
mm,
mention nutrition. They'll talk about the typical things: eyesight, the fur. Sometimes they'll mention the feet and the paws. They'll always mention joint and mobility and about
yep,
movement. And then occasionally, if they're controversial and probably from Texas, they'll talk about raw food, right? That seems to be
sure,
the thing over and over and over and over. So where
yep.
can our audience go and find out more about what you do, more about what you're sharing? Because you share it on Instagram, you share it on TikTok. It's just two channels that I found you on. Where can they find out more about what you're doing and if they're the right candidate to work with you?
Certainly, they can jump on my website, which is vermontdogtrainer.com. I look at, and of course, Instagram and all the other social media stuff that we have to keep up with. I look at it where, to me, the ideal client, number one, if they're already calling and making an appointment, that's the start, right?
Okay.
They're recognizing we need help.
Mm.
I think for me to walk into their home, something that would make it ideal would be everybody in the family is on board. So they've already created an agreement of some sort. They've already all agreed that we need help.
Mhm.
Number two, be open to what I'm going to show you. Don't be afraid to question what I'm doing. I think too many times when we ask for help, we just take in everything and we just assume it's going to work for us. And I think things need to be customized a little bit for each person. Again, if it's a workout program, there may be certain exercises that don't work for me because my back hurts or my ankle's bad or whatever. You know what I mean? And so I certainly want people to ask questions, the whys, that kind of thing. I also want people to be able to, when I walk out the door and shut it behind me, I want them to be able to follow through with things.
Mm.
Like, just because I was there for the hour, 2 hours, doesn't mean that everything's going to be rainbows and butterflies and I flip the switch for them and they're not going to have to do anything anymore. It just doesn't work that way. And so for them to be able to follow through so that when I come back for the second lesson, at that time I always tell people, I don't need you to have accomplished steps 1, 2, and 3, but I do need you to have attempted them with repetition and now give me feedback, because your feedback's going to determine how I need to tweak it to fit your situation and your lifestyle and your dog's lifestyle, so that we can keep moving forward and keep making progress to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. So I'm not the blueprint guy of like every client that I see has to be like I do the exact same thing with everybody. I think that would be doing them a disservice. I think each dog owner with their dog is its own separate situation. And I think too, Jason, this is when I say like there's a ton of information out there for people. Do you have a dog or you don't have a dog?
So this is why I came up with this business. I want a dog so bad I can't even tell you. But because I've had these terrible losses in my life, I'm really scared of getting a dog and it doesn't live very long. So I was like, how do I guarantee I get the most amount of health span? I can't push I don't care about the lifespan if they're sick for the last 7 years of their lives, but health span. And that's when I found out there wasn't a lot of options for health span. It was all around these like small things. Let's just fix the eyes. Let's just fix the joint. Let's just fix the calcium. Let's just fix the, nails, the teeth. That was it. It was always the same things. So my girlfriend's aunt has a dog right next door. We have two houses next to each other. I go and play with their dog.
Nice.
Little Lulu. Love her dog.
See, so I look at that situation. So your girlfriend's aunt has the dog. Where can she find online the same situation that she has in the same style house, in the same style outside environment, the same age dog with the same temperament? You see where I'm going with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
I will tell you right now, she's not going to find it.
No chance.
No chance. So that's why I feel like when I walk into somebody's house, how can I just pigeonhole them into just the one way? Because your girlfriend's aunt could spend literally days looking online for the exact situation and the exact same problem that her dog is giving her and how to treat said problem the way that she feels is right. You're just not going to find it. And that's where I think we run into, and I'm guilty of it. I put out a ton of information, right? And so I'm a part of it to a degree, but that's where I want people to understand where I'm coming from is I'm just going to give you pieces of the pie. You take the pieces that you really enjoy and you work those things. And if it works for you, great. And if there's some pieces that don't, I am not offended. It doesn't work for your situation. But I think that's where a lot of frustration comes through for a lot of dog owners, is that they look for the solution, again, that worked for the Joneses next door. But to them, it's not even close because it is a different situation. You can't compare them ever. You won't find it.
So it's actually far more nuanced than the average person thinks. They think, well, I have a Chihuahua, so anyone that else has a Chihuahua, anywhere else in the world, if they found something that's helped them behaviorally or physiologically or emotionally, it'll work for me. Where actually it's nuanced, just like a personal trainer is nuanced to your particular lifestyle, your particular area, your particular work schedules, nutritional needs, as you mentioned, broken parts that no longer work or age reliant, and I think that's, it's one of the reasons we wanted you on the show is we wanted to sort of say, it's very easy right now to look at people and go, oh, that's an influencer, right? Or it's really easy, that person's only making money because they talk about a certain subject over and over. But to get real experts in who have the ability not only to talk about what they do really well, which you've done brilliantly on the show, but also to say, hold on a second, it's still nuanced. Even with 17 years of experience, I can tell you it is still very nuanced. It's not black and white. It's not that I've come down the hill with a tablet and these are the rules and everyone has to stick to them and it'll work the same for everyone. It's very, very different. And I think that's probably been one of the most important things that have come from this episode. So I want to, on behalf of all our listeners and myself and Alicia, who has lost Wi-Fi, she just messaged me to say her entire area has gone down.
No way. Wow.
Yeah. So, I mean, first we had a tree go through your truck window.
Yes.
Now we had the internet go down.
We're going to persevere, though.
We're going to make it through. We're at the end right now. If you've got a last message to our listeners, what would you love to share with them? What would your last message be?
I want people to be more aware of their dog's state of mind. That's really what it comes down to. What is your dog going through mentally, and how are they showing it to you physically? Because that's truly where it comes out. And I want us to understand a dog's mental well-being more than what we are right now. And we're doing better. We're doing better, but we can always do a little bit better too. And that's what I want people to understand. And when you put your dog into a sit, wait extra 5 seconds and look at your dog and go, what kind of state of mind is my dog in here? And am I going to nurture this? Do I want more of this or do I want less of it? And I think when people start to understand that, it'll make them better dog owners. And I think it's going to help their relationship with their dogs too.
I love that. And with that, we're going to end this episode of The Rich Life Recipe, which wasn't just for you, but also for your dogs and your companions. To find out more about Ian Grant, he's really easy to find. But we'll also have a bunch of stuff in the show notes, which are below wherever you're listening to this, hopefully on Apple iTunes. And if you're on Apple, make sure to give us 5 stars. Leave a word. Leave any word whatsoever that you took as important. And we're only looking for one word. Woof does not count. I need an actual word. What was the best thing you learned about this episode? What would you like to find out more about? Of course, we will also have it on our social media channels where we'll make sure to tag Ian so it's really easy to find him. And I think he's got so much more to teach us that I spent just a few days really going through your content, and I learned so much that I've been trying next door. So my aunt loves me at the moment. I don't know how long that's going to last.
Nice.
Exactly. So I thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Well, listen, thank you again. I know Alicia wants to say thank you. She has been able to send me a text and say, I just want to apologize. She also apologizes to our listeners. But wherever you are, please look after each other. Remember, the Rich Life Recipe starts with realizing what makes you rich. And sometimes it's just being with dogs and making their lives far better, which makes their families that they are part of their lives better too. So thank you for listening, and we'll catch you at the next one.
If you love this episode, make sure to subscribe so you never miss your weekly fix. New episodes are released every Wednesday. And if you think this podcast could help someone in your life build their own Rich Life Recipe, please make sure to share this with them too.
Hey, you. Yes, you. I'd like to invite you to something brand new. Something we're calling One Person Empires. Who am I? Jason Allan Scott. You just saw me a couple of seconds ago in that podcast, where we were telling you about a rich life, where we bring you guests to explain how to have a rich life. It's in this idea that we decided to create a community to teach people just like you how to have your own rich life. What is a rich life? It's about doing what you want, with whom you want, when you want, wherever you want. Think of one-person empires like the Alcoholics Anonymous, a place to come to find community, to find people just like you who've done it, who've got through it, who can help you get through it. Because no one is coming to save you. That's what it says. Save yourself. Build an empire. That's what I want for you. That's what your family wants for you. That's what your community wants for you. AI, robotics, technology, tariffs, it's changing the world. But here's a chance to you to change your own world, to find sovereignty, to find independence. This is what we're offering. It's a set of principles and a set of challenges to turn you from one-upreneur to entrepreneur. It's a blueprint we can teach absolutely anyone. And that's what's inside One Person Empires. Other people just like you, learning the process, going through the challenges. In fact, I wanted to make it so bulletproof that in our very first challenge, I'm going to show you how to make all your money back for joining. And because you're a listener of the podcast, we've made you a special offer. Simply type in listener to get a discount in the community. Joining the community, have a chance to find out what it's like to live a rich life.